Oh my God. Whoa. I get so nervous, dude. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Ah. This is Lo-Fi Lit with Aidan Ryan, and he's from Buffalo, and he's about to come on, and I'm still like having anxiety and nervous. Oh, I'm freaking out the entire day. Oh, I'm not too loud. He wrote this book, Organizing Isolation. We're 1 minute away from the interview. He's fiance of Rochelle. She does Peach Magazine online. Oh my goodness. One question I'd like to ask everyone is, shit. I said admit. What the fuck? Hey!
Hey!
What's up, man? Am I too loud?
No, you're perfect. You're perfect.
All right, cool. How's Buffalo?
Good. So, well, I'm actually not in Buffalo right now.
You're not in Buffalo? What happened?
Yeah. So, you might know Rochelle has been out doing her MFA at UMass Amherst for the last 2 years.
I thought she went back to Buffalo.
So, she's been out here, and I just made the move out here. So we've got an apartment in Western Mass now, and that's where I'll be for the rest of the year.
Oh, you guys are living out there together?
Yeah. I just really moved in over the summer, so things are just kind of settling in, but it's been nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys doing events out there?
We're not yet. I mean, I think like once all the colleges in this area, organize a lot of stuff. So once that kicks off, the calendar will be pretty full. There was a little reading that we threw together, that Rochelle and Caroline Rayner threw together a couple weeks back.
Was Lucy there?
Yeah, Lucy was there. Chris, okay. It was a really great time. But that's basically been it. It's been a relatively quiet summer otherwise.
Do you guys do a lot of events like in the past? Or do you live like a mostly like solitary life?
I feel like a few years ago we were doing events all the time. Like, 2016 to 2018 into 19, it was crazy. Like it was most of, my attention and bandwidth was on like Foundlings events, and Rochelle was doing Peach events. And, then obviously the pandemic kind of changed things. And I know Rochelle's been busy doing Peach events that moved more online.
Yeah, because those are awesome, dude. She does those so well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always so cool and special to see that community come together online.
With Foundlings and Peach, do you guys like sit down and like try to make them separate from each other because they seem like they have very distinct aesthetics, or do you just do your own thing in your head?
It's a really good question. We don't really sit down and say like, hey, don't do this thing, whatever. It's really more, where we can kind of cross-pollinate and do stuff together. That's more interesting. We don't do that all the time. Obviously, there's like Foundlings is deeply not online. Like
is that a deliberate choice?
No, it's just the nature of the people who started it. Like we're not online people. And if I remember to log on and like some things on Twitter, like that might happen once or twice a month, unfortunately. And everybody else, like Max is, he's been in med school this whole time, like doing radiology stuff, and he has no time. And Steve is, launching rockets to Mars. So they don't have the time to do it, unfortunately.
So you mostly run it?
When it comes to like the online stuff, I'm the one who, tries to keep engaged there, but obviously I'm not great at that.
Yeah.
So that's okay. We're slow publishing.
Are you the one that came up with it, or did you guys were you guys friends first and then decided to do it, or did you meet them trying to make it first?
Yeah, we were all friends first. Steve Coffett and I met in high school. We were like best friends from sophomore year on. And then Steve went to UB, and he was roommates with Max Crinan their freshman year, and then they stayed roommates. And then I went to Canisius College in Buffalo, and I met Darren, and he was the graphic designer. We worked on the school paper together.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a few years later that we all kind of recombined and said, why don't we start making this poetry magazine?
Okay. So do you still see Foundlings continuing onwards? Because you said they're all very busy doing other things. Is it like dying down, or when they get out of their school, are you guys going to ramp back up?
I think we'll still stay active. I think the challenge has been finding a way to do it that still feels fun, like it's not a chore,
Yeah.
that works with everybody's schedule and is low pressure. And luckily, I think we've been able to kind of find that balance. What it looks like as we move into the next stage of our lives, whatever that means for each of us, it'll probably be different, but I don't think it'll go anywhere. We've got a lot of books in the hopper for sure.
Well, I like the Foundlings thing that you do with the 3 chapbooks, and you bring them
Mm.
together, and you kind of do that every year. I love how the theme of it looks, and it's so well put together. It's very like upscale, very classy. I like that it's different because a lot of university presses in their magazines, they kind of look like crap, honestly. Sorry to any like universities out there, but they do.
Yeah.
So, how did you guys come up with that idea?
Well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. That's so nice. And all credit for design. Like, I'm not sure that people know this because of all the people in Foundlings. Darren Canham is probably the least online,
Hmm.
and his work is sometimes the least visible, even though it's right there. But everything that has to do with Foundlings design comes from Darren. He
Okay.
is the goat. Um, so I think what we were trying to do with Strays was, we started as a magazine, and it was like kind of eclectic. There was random stuff in there, things that we were scanning on university Xerox machines, and people's poems and stuff all jumbled together. Then we became a press, and it was like, oh, we have to make things look a little more professional. And the Strays was a way to kind of get back to our roots.
Hmm.
So we wanted to put out books that looked clean from a design perspective, but were, simple, staple bound on, paper that didn't look like super textured or expensive or anything. And we wanted them to be cheap to make, but simple and clean. So that was all Darren.
And how do you find the people to do people send pieces to you to like get the books together? Because I know you chose Rochelle and Julian Neely for one of them. And Julian Neely, I didn't know her before I had read like that Strays chapbook. And like
Mm.
every time I open like a new poem, it was like this thing I had never even like seen before. It was like, can you even do this? I'm like, I guess, because she did it. It's on the page. It was so wild.
Yeah, I love that reaction to Julie's poetry. I think she would too. That's definitely how I feel. So yeah, you've hit on like one of the intentions behind Strays.
Hmm.
Um, you know, what we wanted to do was put out something that had the substance of a chapbook, but to put 3 poets together in such a way that there would probably be somebody you didn't know before.
Yeah.
So, maybe people who know Rochelle know Julie, or vice versa, or, but maybe people who know Mary Ruffle don't know Julie,
Yeah.
or
Like,
don't know Rochelle, or, you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
and for each pack, we tried to do that too. So this next one, for example, is going to be D.A. Powell, Kanice Jarbo, and Noah Falk. Maybe you know all 3 of their work really well, but hopefully something in there is new, and that people who are buying it because they know DA haven't read Noah or Kanice, or because they know Kanice they haven't read Noah, and so forth. So anyway, all that is to say, I'm glad that you had that experience.
Well, no problem. I feel like that would transition to like a project you could like put up online to advertise it. Why do you not do online stuff?
When you say like put up online, what do you mean?
I
Like
guess like do like a podcast where you sit down with all 3 of them and like talk about the chapbook and how it came together and everything. Are you decidedly like just trying to be around Buffalo and around New York?
no, definitely not. We I would actually love to do events outside of Buffalo, especially now that I'm living in Massachusetts. That would be
Yeah.
great. And I've always wanted to do, like, Steve lives out in LA, and I've always wanted to do something there. But honestly, it's just like time and money constraints
Yeah.
of us in Buffalo, where it's
Like
easier to do things.
your focus is
Yeah.
more offline.
Yeah. But
So did you, Oh,
I,
sorry.
the podcast idea. So with Doug, he wasn't able to travel to. We have a launch coming up in Buffalo, and he wasn't going to be able to travel. So I sat down with him and did something like this, where we recorded him reading all the poems. We ended up just having a conversation for an hour afterwards. So I did think like, oh, that was kind of fun and cool. Like maybe I should throw that up online. So it's a good idea. It just hadn't really occurred to us before.
Well, like on your YouTube page, I went back through like your videos, and you have like like all the way back to 2013, where like I think you're in college or high school, and you're putting up videos and like doing interviews with people from like the school newspaper. So it seems like you have that background to be able to do that stuff. And I also saw an interview you did with like I think his name was Justin Parcher, like one of your friend of yours, and you had this like very like elaborate setup like outside of a bar. And you had like a grip guy and a whole very professional camera set up. And I saw that it was episode 1. So you're used to that process, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that like that's another lifetime, right? That was when Foundlings just started and was a magazine, and
Hmm.
we did think at that time like, oh, we were going to be online and we're gonna, put out more video content and stuff, and then it just nobody had the time or energy for it, and again, I've seen this happen to people and organizations in the arts generally. If you overcommit and get overwhelmed, you just pull the plug and you kill the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
burnout.
that's been something I've always wanted to make sure we don't do. So like instead of overcommitting, let's just pump the brakes a little bit, put out some good books, and then see if we want to do more.
That's a good idea. So like what presses did you watch where you saw that happen?
um what presses did I watch that where I saw it happen?
And like maybe when you were growing up, what presses did you look to maybe that you wanted to emulate?
So well, that's a funny question, because Foundlings actually did have a very specific inspiration. We were all sitting around. So Stephen, we were still in college at the time, sitting around Stephen Max's apartment, and Max had this like shoebox of stuff from his dad. His
Hmm.
dad, Jerry Crinan, is an incredible poet. And when he was he did his MFA at Brown with C.D. Wright and Forrest Gander, and he was an intern for Lost Roads Press, which was the press that CD founded with Frank Stanford and that published all the early Frank Stanford chapbooks. And Jerry had all of them. Like he didn't get paid as an intern; he just got all these original chapbooks from the late '70s, early '80s, and it was just this mind-blowingly cool stuff. We loved the design, we loved the poems, the kind of poetry that was in there. So we were going through this. After Jerry left Brown, he did his PhD at Binghamton, and he started a magazine.
Yeah.
And it was, if you look at the original Foundlings magazines, they're kind of like this magazine. I think it was called Slow Mountain, but they would have a poem by John Ashbery next to a poem by somebody I've absolutely never heard of before that was just one of their friends in college,
Yeah.
next to a page from a phone book that they tore out and scanned, next to an inside joke. Like it was just so
Oh, that's cool.
funny and approachable.
Hmm.
That specifically was what inspired Foundlings. We said we want to do something that feels like that, but also feels like today.
Cool. Did you grow up in Buffalo?
I did, yeah.
How was that? What was like growing up like? What was your
Buffalo,
childhood like?
I had a happy childhood, I guess. No,
Yeah.
Buffalo was different from what it is today. Like I feel like Buffalo's more just like buzzy now. There's been in recent years, there's been so many articles about like, oh, Buffalo's coming back, and oh, look at all these good things that are happening in Buffalo, and that's cool, and there's some substance behind that. But growing up in Buffalo, there just wasn't that kind of spotlight on the city. And there probably were cool things happening, but it felt, I've used this phrase before, but it felt like the land of antique shops. Where I lived
Really?
specifically, there was just antique shops everywhere, and not all these like microbreweries and stuff that we have now.
How was your schooling? Did you have like a good school that you went to?
I had great English teachers. I'm really grateful that like a series of incredible teachers had a big impact on me. Yeah.
How early on did you want to write and get into writing?
Probably, I think that actually, so my parents showed me a few years back. They had saved a printout of, I think I was like 3 years old. So I was born in 93. This was in 1996. I like dictated this story to them and made them type it out for me.
Oh wow.
Unfortunately,
They're very cooperative. Like
yeah,
collaboration, man.
yeah, I haven't been able to have anybody take dictation for me since then. That was probably the first and last time. But yeah, it was like some weird little story about going into the basement and finding this family of ghosts that lived there or something.
Oh, that's
So
cool. Do you
I
still
like,
have it?
yeah, it's they. I
We'll
probably
put
need
it
them
up.
to take a picture of it and send it to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Or put it online or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask you if you ever cried in front of your classmates. Because one time I threw a tantrum in front of my classmates because I invited the entire class to the roller rink for my birthday party. And I got really I know this has nothing to do with writing. I'm just trying to get good stories from you.
Yeah. Well, what? So wait, you threw a party at a roller rink, and that
Yeah,
was the.
I was like in like third grade or something. And at the end of the night, I guess I was just exhausted and I had everyone line up and like give me their birthday present. And I
Mm,
for some reason threw a tantrum and I put all the presents I liked in one line and all the presents I didn't like in another line. And I don't remember why I got mad, but I just thought it would be a particularly interesting story to share because I'm trying to get better at storytelling instead of just asking blunt questions to people.
wow, I love that story. What an image of the judgment of the presence.
Yeah.
Almost like biblical or something.
Oh, thank you. The
Yeah.
carpet. I remember the carpet being like it was all black with like green and neon purple like planets and shooting stars and stuff.
Mhm.
Just how a roller rink is in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know the aesthetic well. That is terrifying though. I always had difficulty as a kid with moments of having to receive presents. Um, in fact, my parents would do this thing when my sister and I, like, we would drive to my grandma's house for Christmas morning, and
Mhm.
my parents would like quiz us on how to respond to strange presents. Not that we ever really got them. It was just kind
Wait,
of
what? Wait, what? They quizzed
yeah.
you on how to receive a present? It's like a
Yep.
social thing?
Hmm. Yeah, it was some kind of social conditioning.
So like wait,
Um,
they would like ask you like if you got a dog, like they would like here's how you're supposed to respond and not respond?
well, they wouldn't give us the coaching first. They would be like, all right, like it was almost play acting. Like, all right, I'm such and such uncle, and I give you something that you just got the night before. How do you respond to that? And we'd have to like, act out the response and be like, oh, thank you so much, blah blah blah. And then it would get funnier and funnier, and they would say like bizarre things, like, what if you got these like really ugly socks, or what if you got this toy that's for babies? And then
Wow.
it would make us act it out. So
That's cool. So they like were like challenging you from like your family members. Maybe
mhm.
they got like really weird shit when they were growing up. Did they
I'm
grow up
sure
in
they did,
Buffalo?
yeah. They did,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, so they're like very so like you're back to your heritage, like if you look back into your ancestors, like do they just like live in New York?
My dad's family came from Ireland. His mom's side, I think, was in New York State much longer, but his dad's side, his grandfather came from Ireland. My mom's side, all came from Italy about 2 generations back.
Oh yeah, you're
Um,
half Italian. I remember that.
mhm.
Rochelle said that once.
Yeah, yeah,
She's Italian too.
she is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Were you looking for a girlfriend that was Italian?
No,
Because of like a family like pressure?
no, no. If
Oh,
it was, I was not sensitive to that pressure. No.
you just related to the Italian thing.
Yeah, I think there is something about like common touchstones of your upbringing. Even though Rochelle grew up in the Falls and I grew up in Buffalo, and
What are the falls?
Niagara Falls.
Oh, is that in New York?
Yeah, yeah, it's about 20 minutes away from Buffalo, just north.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So you guys
beautiful.
grew up in the same area.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
Okay. So do a lot of Italians have ADD?
That I don't know.
Oh, that'd be something to look into. So did you have a typical Italian like upbringing? We had like big family get-togethers?
Um, yeah, certainly. I felt that on on my mom's side. I mean,
I
we
don't
have
want
big
to.
family get-togethers on both sides, I guess,
I don't
but
want to stereotype Italians or anything.
yeah. Well, I
I just
remember
know
this
they have
one
big
time
family.
in high school, and it was an English class. I think I was a junior. We were talking about Wordsworth. We were reading Tintern Abbey, lines composed about Tintern Abbey, and the poem it does this interesting thing with memory where Wordsworth is anticipating remembering something. Talk
Yeah.
about living in the
Wow.
present. It's really interesting, and try to explain that to us for the first time. Our teacher, Mr. Kenny, who just passed away this year, actually, absolute legend, he was asking us about things that were better in anticipating than ever in real life.
Hmm.
So like it's more pleasurable to anticipate like Thanksgiving, he said, than actually living through it. And he asked us like, what do you typically do on these holidays? And I remember he was like, so what do you eat at Thanksgiving? And I was like, oh, ravioli. And he just mocked me mercilessly. He's like, ravioli? What in the world are you talking about? Who has ravioli at Thanksgiving? And I never really occurred to me that that was strange until that moment.
I don't think that's strange.
Yeah, he was probably just,
You're just teasing you.
just teasing me a bit, but yeah.
So let's talk about your book a little bit, The Organizing
Oh,
Isolation.
sure.
So you came up with the idea because you would get letters from your family, and then you would scan them onto a copier. Did you have like a copier like already, or
Um,
did you have to go seek one out like at a local library? Like when you came up with the idea, how many letters did you have before you came up with the idea?
I had quite a few letters. It really happened because I went away to Scotland for a year, and probably a
For
little more
school?
than that. Yeah, for school. After college, I left like right away. I went to Ireland for a little bit to study at the Yates School. Then I hung out with a friend in Germany for a while. Who was gracious enough to put me up, and then
Was
uh,
that for writing? Sorry for interrupting. That's
no,
what
no,
I
no,
do.
that's fine.
Okay.
Um, not really. The Ireland thing was there's this there's a scholarship where I went at Canisius that sends one student every year to go to this Yates school.
And
It's
you
like
got picked? Wow.
yes, I was lucky
That's
enough to get
cool.
picked. Yeah,
You're the
yeah, I'm
one
super
guy that got
grateful.
picked.
It was a
And
transformative experience for sure.
how was it transformative? In what ways?
Um, Honestly, it changed the way I thought about poetry. I mean, I had a great undergrad experience, but this was such a deep dive into the mystery of Yeats, like where he lived. I came away. So there was the reverence that the people of Sligo have for Yeats was so it just impressed me so much and made me appreciate the poetry more too and listen more closely.
What is his poetry like? I'm not very familiar with Yeats.
Um, what is his poetry like?
How do you
Uh,
relate to it, or what did you find fascinating about it?
I think well, it he covers a lot of ground, right? So there's
Yeah.
some of the early poetry is maybe a little lighter. Has to do with like Irish myth and the fairy world and stuff. He's interesting in that he is one of the early modern poets and helps bring us into what modern poetry really is. But he also has this ancient sense of like magic. Like I think
Hmm.
he really believed in fairies. Um, so I kind of love that ability to hold these competing ideas, like of imagining a new modern Ireland that rejects the old, but also he's in touch with these kind of superstitions and beliefs and things that are beyond logic. So I really
Was it
appreciate that.
was it like a religion to him?
He has certainly a religious sense. It's like a stew of religious influences. I think Catholicism, Protestantism, and then this sort of mythic stuff. Yeah,
Was he playing around with it? Was it very playful?
yeah, he can be playful, definitely. The
So
the
you
other, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You said your family was from Ireland, I think. Did
Mhm.
you look into your family's history and try to find anyone that was related to you out there?
Yeah, totally. So
Cool.
I have an aunt, my dad's youngest sister, who every family has somebody who's more interested in genealogy than the others, and she's that.
Oh yeah.
And I think I'm grateful for it because she puts in so much time to learn this interesting stuff. I sort of went with homework from her because I was going to be over there, and she said, "Oh, you've got to go visit the old Ryan farm." And it was in County Clare in a place called Ennis-Stuyman. She connected me with a family who lived near it, so I was able to get people to take me up there. And Tyler, this was wild. They're only like 3 generations back, all the way up until 1966, I think.
Wow.
There were relatives of mine living in this thing. It was a dirt floor, single-story stone hut with a corrugated tin roof,
Damn.
and with just darkness, no plumbing, no electricity, and yet in this beautiful, spare, kind of austere countryside with ponies and horses and cows running around and stuff. It was a lot. I visited the grave, which was unmarked, and one of the interesting details was that the family, nobody could read until they came over to America. So
Mhm.
but I found this parish church that had records of births and deaths and things.
Wow.
And my great great grandfather, great 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 grandfather or something, I'm not sure how many greats, was Dennis Ryan. But because he didn't know how to read or write, he couldn't sign his own name. So the
Mhm.
priest signed his name for him, but he spelled it in Latin and used Dionysus instead of Dennis, which the juxtaposition of the grandiose Dionysus, an actual god, with this Irish peasant guy who couldn't read, was just so weird and provoking for me. So yeah,
So he knew religion though.
yeah, they definitely participated in that too.
Probably
Um,
oral tradition.
yeah, and they would go to church, but they also believed in the fairy realm, even though they went to church. Like, this stuff mixed. Like, right next to the church, St. Augustine's, was this fairy well that they believed had magic powers, and they would have gone and like baptized their children there. It was an interesting mix of uh, beliefs.
Do you relate to that anecdote of him signing his name in like this grand way in any way with yourself?
I don't know how it relates to me, I
Oh,
guess, but
because
I don't
sometimes
know.
I hear like family history stuff and I like kind of relate it back to me.
Hmm.
Like we had this, maybe this one doesn't relate to me, but I had like a great great grandmother. They lived in, I think she lived in Ireland and she was like 18 or 19 and she stole like a 3 pence shawl. And it was like during the 1830s, my dad like he's looked all this stuff up and they like traced our heritage back through time. And so she went to court and they took her from her family and they moved her to Tasmania where they put
Oh,
convicts or something. And then somehow we from Tasmania we go to Australia, and then my great great grandfather he like jumps on this ship that's going to New York, and it's a crazy story. But I was just thinking about how my family they kind of do these wild, outrageous stunts. Like I was like thinking maybe I should be more like that or something.
yeah. Do you also do wild, outrageous stunts, you
I
think?
no, not really. Maybe this is the wildest thing I do.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think this stuff does live on in us, but at the same time, I'm trying to be closely attentive to, and I'm interested in like what we're recreating because we want that sense of a connection to the
Like
past.
the stories that we tell ourselves
Yeah,
and try to
exactly.
commit to or
Right.
not commit to.
And what is just coincidence versus something that's
Yeah.
genuinely passed on. Yeah.
Have you thought about have you tried to write about your trip to Ireland? Because I know that you have had a blog that you kept for a pretty long time. Did you ever think about trying to publish any of the pieces that you put on the blog, or go back through them and rewrite them, or do anything with that, or like just write about the that that experience of seeing your past family's farm?
Yeah,
'Cause
so actually I did write about the farm thing and about these issues, like what is actually passed on versus what am I yearning for, blah blah blah. And I published it through CNN International, bizarrely.
oh yeah,
Um,
you were on
and
CNN.
I used to have that like in like the standard bio when I was doing a lot of readings around Buffalo in like 2016, and I kept it in largely because every time Noah Falk, who's a good friend of ours, heard it in the audience, he would just laugh because it
Hmm.
was so funny to hear CNN in a poetry bio. So I just had to keep it forever. But I checked recently, and it's not online anymore, which really sucks. So maybe I have to like republish it or something. Yeah.
Have you thought about publishing essays or anything? Like
Yeah.
in a book together?
Um, yeah, definitely. I mean, really, I write mostly nonfiction these days.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it. So whether there's a book in there, maybe I guess. I do have a long. I have one nonfiction book I'm trying to shop around right now.
What's that
So
about?
that is actually more about my mom's side of the family. It in brief, my aunt and godmother, Cindy Suffoletto, my mom's sister, passed away in 2012, and her husband, Andy Topolsky, passed away 4 years before that. They were both artists who
Hmm.
left Buffalo in the 80s to seek opportunities in New York. They were part of a really interesting movement in art. And they were both dead, like right when I was becoming interested in art myself as a teenager.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and this book was an attempt to, I don't know, like my whole experience of art in the world, like visual art or poetry, or trying to be an artist and get published and get into the right circles and stuff. I'd be experiencing it sort of through an idea of what they might have had experienced in a similar way. Um, and then I found all these little, as I got older, I'd find these little correspondences like, oh, Andy was actually in this show in this gallery that I'm visiting in Germany, and I had like no idea. And oh, that's interesting. Or he knew this person, or Cindy knew that person, and I'm now reading their work. Or oh, Andy really loved Arthur Rimbaud, and then now I'm reading Arthur. So none of that really means anything on its own. But I started to try to piece this together and piece together who these people were,
Hmm.
that I can't stop thinking about. So it ended up being kind of like a biography of their lives and their relationship, and then also a story of my sort of seeking for them after losing them so early.
That's very interesting. So it goes back to that guy that you're talking about earlier that was talking about the memory that you were going to anticipate. You're trying to anticipate their art in some way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's all kinds of like projecting back and forth in time going on.
So
Um,
what movement were they a part of?
so a couple. So Andy really was the much more famous artist, and that's in part because Cindy put her career on hold to support him. But he was older. He was part of what's called. I would argue he's part of what's called the Pictures generation.
Mhm.
And they were a group of artists that came up in New York City, California, Buffalo, and Toronto around the same time. They include like Cindy Sherman, Robert Longo, Vito Acconci, or he's a little older. And basically, they were interested in turning things into other things. So they were the first generation that grew up with like war on TV, and post Nixon, pre kind of the Wall Street era. Um, and a lot of it happened in Buffalo. But then this group that came together and they started the Hall Walls Gallery. They did tons of really cool, cutting edge interdisciplinary stuff. They all just got out of town around the same time because there's just
Mhm.
not that much money in Buffalo to support this many artists. So Andy and Cindy followed that group to New York. Andy, though, is also part of what's called post minimalism. Um, and he also, I think, participated in Fluxus and Intermedia.
What's post minimalism?
Honestly, some of that stuff goes over my head. I'm really not an art
Yeah.
critic. But as far as Andy's style is concerned, I think it takes some of the aesthetic refinement of minimalism, but like reintroduces intertextual stuff. So like his art he was an incredibly precise draftsman. Like there's a real beauty, an austere beauty to his work, but he would
Mhm.
also have random bits of text and random images and like the schema for nuclear silos and all this stuff that is just introduced as a kind of noise that turns into language into the art.
Well, that's cool. Do you so you come from a huge family of artists? Because I think your sister's an artist too. What like when you were growing up, did you feel any pressure to like go into art? Because you
No,
said you
no.
did some art.
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I mean, Andy and Cindy were the only people in the family who were artists like that, to my knowledge.
Uh,
And they were a little bit remote. Like, even though Cindy was my godmother and paid so much attention to me, I'm, grateful for that now. They lived in New York, so we only saw them a few times a year. And my sister and I like didn't think of ourselves as like artists. We were just kids, And then Talia's talent just sort of exploded, and it became very clear that she was going to be an artist. But because she paints and I totally suck at all visual stuff, there was no pressure on me, at least.
even though you made a book that is mostly visual.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking when I made that, but
You're just going for it, man. You just had like this ambition to make something.
yeah, yeah.
So let's go back to the photocopier. You're over in Ireland.
So this actually came together a little later. Basically, because I left home, a lot of my friends, would write letters to me.
And then, like it's interesting because it was physical and like not like emails or texts.
Yeah.
Do you think now if you were over there, they would mostly email or text you and not physically write letters? And like, how far into the process of you getting letters did they start to know that you're going to do this book?
Really, I only decided to do it after I came back.
Oh.
So it was a way, and I was feeling a little sad, honestly, and like missing that time. Like I felt a little, I was sort of feeling a little lost,
Mm-hmm.
I had given up the Scotland thing. I could have gone on to do a PhD and didn't. I was like, did I make the right choice? I've
Oh,
missed
really?
people in my life. Yeah, yeah. So this was a way of trying to make some sense of that whole period that came before. The question of like, would they text or email? Sometimes I don't know. Like, actually sitting down and writing a letter forces you to share in a different way. I don't know that it would have been a very different book if I was slicing up, text.
Oh yeah, it'd be way different because I think you get a lot of personality from just seeing people's handwriting. And also when I was reading like the book, I didn't really get any sense. Like sometimes when I'm reading a book, you can like kind of subconsciously think of like the writer's like economic status or their class level and like kind of make judgments. I wasn't even thinking of you cutting up things into the poems or the letters. I was just thinking of the person that was writing it
Mm,
and taking it as a whole at once.
yeah. Well, I'm glad for that that effect came off. It felt like a dialogue for me, and I was so interested in the idea of artistic processes dialogue at that time.
Hmm.
That's kind of what I focused on in my master's in Scotland, and I thought, here, this is a chance for dialogue, but it's an unfair and uneven dialogue because I am ultimately the one who's cutting the words and shaping the poems, and there's this illusion that it's their language because it's their handwriting, and that's so strong that it kind of obscures my hand, I think. But at the same time, in reality, I'm constrained by the words that they wrote. I can't supply something that wasn't there. So
Do
yeah.
you think you work better with constraints?
For a project like that, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I've that is way larger than the number of just actual like poems I've ever written.
Hmm.
It was very generative in that way.
Do you plan on ever going back to Scotland and seeing that farm with like Rochelle or friends or anyone?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope to get back there. Yeah. I don't know when, but it'll happen.
Does she have any family that she wants to go see like overseas?
I don't think specific family, but definitely I think Rochelle wants to get to Italy and see where her folks came from and
That would be cool.
see that landscape. Yeah.
So you said you met these. Can you talk a little about your friends that you met when you set up Foundlings Press? I know I'm going all over the place.
Oh yeah, that's cool. You mean like Darren and Max and Steven?
Yeah, because I don't know them at all. I just know you mostly.
Yeah, yeah. So Steve, like I said, is my oldest friend from that group. He is a super cool guy. He's although he has of all of us, I think he has the least of a literary background. He's a deep reader and a deep thinker, but he's a scientist. He works for NASA. He works at
He works for NASA, dude.
Yeah, he's a
Damn,
literal
you guys are like You guys are very intelligent people,
Well, Steve and Max are.
but the others aren't.
Well, and Darren, I guess, has another kind of intel. I can't claim the skills that the other three have, but Steve. So yeah, Steve is an actual rocket scientist. He's worked on,
Holy shit, dude.
2 Mars rovers. He's working on the Psyche mission right now.
Damn.
Yeah, yeah, cool dude.
Have you thought about putting that into your work?
I
'Cause
would love it.
you said your
Yeah,
uncle, he put like rocket ships and stuff into his art.
yeah. If I understood any of it, definitely. I would love for Steve to make some art out of his experiences. I think he could, but again, he's got very little time to do so.
Does he
Someday.
talk about what it's like to work at NASA?
Yeah, and I've actually visited the lab. It is pretty wild. You know, the size of some of these machines, and just to think that we actually succeed in putting them sometimes on other planets. Like, I mean, he worked on the Perseverance rover that we dropped on Mars and that's driving around right now. Specifically, he worked on the crane that picks stuff up. It's just so wild to think about these things not in the abstract, but as something that like a friend of yours actually made, like it was a Lego or something. But
Are you
yeah.
are you ever envious of your friends' success in other fields? And do you ever reflect back and go, "Oh, I shouldn't have gone into writing. I should have gone into some other profession that makes more money or been more financially successful or competent or something?"
Not really. I do.
That's good.
I celebrate their. I get so stoked by my friends doing cool stuff. I don't ever really think about it in terms of like, could I have done that? But maybe it's because I could not have done that.
Yeah. I was reading this essay that you did. I think you kind of talked to me about it, about you being a teacher, and it was like in
Hmm.
2015. Like this is like in the humanities of like some national foundation about this kid that like kills himself, and then you had to teach a class over it.
Yes. So yeah. So there was an essay I published in Humanities. Yeah. That it's from the National Endowment. It's actually it's a great magazine. I think it should be on more people's radars. There's a lot of really good writers there, and the editors are incredible. They worked with me on that piece. Yeah. So I was a teacher, a classroom teacher for 1 year, and in the first couple of weeks, there was a student's mother who killed herself, passed away, and that was what I had to sort of deal with. And in doing so, I was fresh out of that grad program in Scotland, and I had, I didn't know how to be a teacher. I certainly also didn't know how to like be a grief counselor or deal with anything
But
like that situation.
didn't the
Uh,
student also kill themselves after they saw their mother kill themselves?
no, that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I turned to this Robert Frost poem, just sort of like randomly. I'm not sure how it popped into my head in the moment, but reading that as sort of a way for the class to sort of process what was going on in around them, not just this horrific fact itself, but also the way that the community had to deal with it. So years later, 5-6 years later, I ended up writing about that very strange and harrowing experience.
I must have misread this essay because I thought it was David Foster Wallace. It was a David Foster Wallace quote about
uh,
burning buildings or standing
yeah,
at a burning building with fire coming out and like
I.
looking down
Mhm.
and not
Yeah,
knowing
no,
whether to jump or
that
not.
was in there. Yeah, I mentioned that too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
So you're a big fan of David Foster Wallace? He's like one of the only guys. When I was in undergrad, or my first part of undergrad, because I'm still in undergrad, because I dropped out in 2014, and then I've gone back and I take a few classes every now and then.
Hmm.
But he was like one of the main guys I really got into at first because I found him on Wikipedia, just looking up modernism or something, or postmodernism, and I read a bunch of his stuff. And a lot of the grad students thought that was like cool or something, even though like I'm not that smart. I just know that one guy real well.
Yeah, I like his work a lot. And
You
particularly
know
some.
so much, man. You're like very very studious at reading.
I don't know. I think like a few things here and there, but often I feel like I've got huge gaps in what I know and what I read, and you know, especially like being around Rochelle and other friends of ours who are reading all the time, and I'm always learning stuff. That's actually, honestly, I think part of why I like to be part of publishing and these groups of people who read and write and stuff, because
Yeah.
they're always pointing out new things that you should be looking at.
Did I already ask you how early on did you really get into writing when you were in grade school?
Um,
Did we go into that?
you mentioned, like, so in grade school, besides that one random story that I made my parents type out,
Yeah.
I didn't really think of myself as a writer until about sixth grade. And this is kind of like embarrassing or bad or something, but I distinctly remember realizing one day that I was pretty funny. And before that, I was like not a popular kid. I was not unpopular, but I was just kind of around. I
Yeah.
was maybe somewhat reserved. And I think we took a like a poetry unit in English class in sixth grade, and I just started writing these like poems making fun of my friends. And they were, little rhymey, couplety poems, but they were pretty funny and pretty good, and people really reacted well to it. And as one does as a kid who cares about, friends' reactions and social affirmation and stuff, I thought, oh, I should lean into this. So I just kept doing it. And I think that was probably the beginning.
And then you started looking at like real poets from like a long time ago. Because I
Yeah.
saw in some interview you were talking about you were into Ezra Pound.
Yeah, that was,
When did you
mhm,
get into Pound after you were writing these funny poems?
much later. That was
Oh.
in grad school. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was your undergrad like? Were you into poetry as much as you were when you were in grad school?
Um, it was a progression into it. So in undergrad, I went to Canisius College. I was in the creative writing program. I actually was an English major and then had to drop it because I didn't want to take this Shakespeare course. I wanted to do something else.
Oh wow.
Um, but I had some great
Did,
teachers.
did you have
Yeah.
to take this Shakespeare course? Or you got out of it?
Well, I got out of it and then had to drop my English degree. I was like a English and creative writing major, and I had
Yeah.
to do the creative writing major because I didn't want to do the Shakespeare course. But so there we go. There's a huge gap. Like I don't really know that much about Shakespeare.
So what major did you go with?
The creative writing.
Can you wait? So you can just go into you don't have to take that because like at OSU I think I would have to take the Shakespeare thing.
Yeah. Somehow I weaseled
Avoided
my way
it.
out of it. Yeah.
So like when you were first starting college as an undergrad, were you focused on creative writing as your focus?
Yeah, I was. By late high school, I realized I wanted to be a writer. I think junior or senior year of high school, I stumbled into some like weird, obscure online magazines. I started, publishing short stories there, and growing out of like my junior high stuff, they were funny and sort of absurdist and weird.
Mhm.
Um, and I got, progressively more serious as I got older. Like the origin point was just like, let me be funny for my friends.
So online magazines really motivated you to write very early on.
They made it seem like writing was a thing that you could do in public and not just in like, your loose leaf paper in school.
And did you start feeling like, oh, I could do one of these magazines at some point?
I'm sure that planted a seed, but I didn't think about it then that way. It was
Mhm.
only later in college when I was exposed to all these bigger magazines like McSweeney's and The Believer and Tin House and Salt Hill and stuff. We had a great magazine section in the library at Canisius. We had to go down there as part of class, and I thought, oh wow, this is a big world with a lot of stuff going on.
So when you're in Scotland, you said you decided not to take up the option to do the PhD. How did you come to that decision, and was that, like, heavy on your mind because you could have went into that?
Yeah, I just had run out of money, and
Well, that's a good
sort of,
good
yeah.
it's a good decision, yeah, if you run out of money.
It
Mm.
makes it easier. And but I don't want to make it sound like, oh, woe is me. Like I had a safety net. I was able to come home to family, and but unfortunately, and I also like made bad choices. Like I wasn't working part time. I think I tried to get a job at various bars and cafes, and nobody hired me. And then
Well, I
I just
mean, if you're looking for a job and no one's hiring you, I mean, it's not like you're sitting around not doing anything.
yeah,
It kinda
I could have tried harder, but yeah.
I mean, it kinda sucks when, like, you graduated and you're looking for jobs, and no one's like, that's happening to me right now. I'm trying to look for jobs, and like no one will fucking take me. I'm like, I could do this job, just like hire me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was tough. I remember having by the end of it, I was doing a lot of journalism. I was doing a lot of music writing, and I wanted to
You do a
apply.
lot of writing.
Yeah,
You had a
yeah,
blog. You did art writing. You're now doing music writing.
yeah. I mean, it was a great time to be able to write constantly all day, every day.
And you got paid for it?
Oh, sometimes the music writing world, especially in these smaller magazines, you'll get paid for the big pieces, but not for like
Indie.
the music reviews. So I would review albums for free, and then every now and then they'd assign me to either go to a festival somewhere or like write a feature, and then you'd get like £50 or something.
Dang. So, did you ever think about being a musician?
I was in bands for a lot of
You
my life.
were? Damn.
Yeah, I played the drums.
Doing a lot.
Yeah,
You're like
I
a
miss
journeyman, jack of all trades.
it. Master of none. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, no, I play the drums if you count that as an instrument.
Percussion.
Unfortunately, it's been tough to like have a space to play this very large, very loud instrument in recent years. So
Hmm.
yeah,
How'd you get into
I'm
drums? Did you play like in like band at like the high school?
I think I got into drums because of John Bonham of Led Zeppelin. When I was a kid, I just heard some Led Zeppelin and thought, wow, this is really cool, and I loved the Titanic sound of the song Moby Dick, and which is just this long drum solo. And I just thought I want to do that.
Yeah, I took percussion in like it was like middle school, but see, I never practiced, and so I go every day, and then I'd be like really bad because
Mm,
it was like you have to do the little da 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 da. Da.
yep,
It's kind of annoying.
yeah, that never excited me either.
Yeah, because they make it so boring and like not fun at all.
Yeah,
So what's the future look out like for you? Like 5 years from now, where do you see yourself?
great question. I don't know. I think I've stopped trying to plan that far ahead, which I hope is the right decision. I think I used to have these really long-term goals, and now I'm just enjoying life, trying to write, trying to read, trying to hang out with friends.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
as far as I plan out.
You don't plan on having you and Rochelle having a family and like a big house with kids,
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
just random.
Yeah, there's, the I've experienced so much change in the last few years that I just sort of stopped trying to plan out that far. But I do hope I publish that book about my aunt and uncle. I want to place that, and then maybe figure out what the next really big project is.
You see Foundlings and Peach ever like doing a project together?
We once did a reading together that was so much fun. It was a masquerade in Buffalo in 2019, I think. That was the last time we really collabed like that, but there might be more ahead. There might be more ahead. No
I, w-
specific.
I was listening to an interview you did once, and you were talking about starting readings out. It was like in 2017, and you guys
Mhm.
were just like going around to random bars and like getting and just starting out readings and not really knowing anyone. Do you think that's a good idea for other people to do? Just to go get a bunch of friends and like do readings in like bars?
The reason we did bars was because they were free. So
Mhm.
when we had no money to like pay a venue fee, venues are sometimes really expensive. It'll be a couple $100s, and you're not going to make that money back.
Yeah.
So, and you just can't support that. So bars on an off night would often say, yes, sure, do a reading because they
Oh,
can kind
really?
of,
Like you go and ask them, and they say, "Oh yeah, sure."
yeah, that was our experience. We were just looking for places to show up, and
So what
where
nights in particular do you ask them for?
um maybe like whenever they didn't have something else going on in their calendar, like if they had a trivia night on Wednesdays and a happy hour on Thursdays. I remember actually the maybe it was the second Foundlings magazine launch. We made the mistake of doing it at a bar during a Sabres game, and like 90% of the bar just did not care that we were reading poetry.
Mhm.
And we had all these poets in the back, getting up there with a microphone, competing with this very loud game on all these televisions. It was just the worst experience, but a lot of fun. But not. I'm like a little embarrassed in retrospect that I made these readers read in
Well, I
that
think
those.
it's, you don't know what you're doing, but you did it, and that's the important thing. So,
Yeah.
did you ever play sports in like school?
A little bit, yeah. I
You done
I did
everything.
football, but I'm not. I wasn't super athletic as a kid. So I did some team sports, but I wasn't like super into it.
Did I ask you what other forms of art has influenced your writing?
No, I don't think you
Or
did.
artists? I was gonna ask that.
Well, I think poetry has influenced a lot of my nonfiction. Just an attention to meter, and that goes back to the Yeats school too. Yeats was so good at meter. And actually, I took a course in scansion during that 2 week period, and that has stayed with me forever. So now I sort of scan prose too.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing I think is this is going to sound so lame, but um, certain music, in particular, like Gustav Mahler, the symphonies, stay with me for prose. I like this idea of introducing a theme or an idea, introducing another one in this kind of accretive way, and then bringing it together. There are certain moments in certain symphonies or maybe some jazz that I like often think of when I think about writing.
So it's like a tide. It's like a very instructive, methodical, but kind of random way of presenting things.
Yeah, definitely. I like Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony. To me is like major influence on my writing. I want writing to feel that way.
You
The
know a
way
lot of like old classical dead people, but I
that
have no idea who these people are.
yeah,
How do you get into these? Just like as a kid, you're like, were your parents like very specific about introducing you to these sorts of artists, or did you seek them out yourself through the
uh
internet?
no, not those artists. Going back to the Irish and Italian household, like with an Italian mom and an Irish dad, I listened to a ton of Enya and I listened to a ton of Andrea Bocelli.
Who are these
And
people? I don't know.
oh, you got to check out Enya. She's the best.
Okay.
And Andrea Bocelli, Rochelle can tell you all about him.
Are they
Yeah.
like composers?
Singers. Yeah.
Oh,
Enya
are
was
they?
really big in the '90s as this
Oh,
kind of mythic Irish voice, ethereal. And then Andrea Bocelli is kind of like an opera singer that crossed over into operatic pop. Yeah.
have you ever watched opera? Are you into that too?
So you know what?
Oh
Rochelle and
my
I went
god.
to the first opera 2 days ago. I'd
Really?
never done it before. We did it on a whim. There was like something at this local opera house, maybe an hour away, and it was such a great experience. Don Giovanni. It was so good.
Oh my god. What was
Yeah.
the opera about? What was the
Um,
story?
Don Giovanni is about this dude Don, who's sort of a nobleman, and he goes around seducing all these women and lying to them and lying to other people and doing all sorts of bad things, killing people, just being a general scoundrel. And
Mhm.
the opera is about him and his servant kind of getting progressively into more and more trouble until uh, a kind of poetic justice happens at the end.
Oh, you can
And
spoil it.
yeah, well,
I'm
he
probably not gonna say.
he gets sort of killed by a force beyond the grave, let's say.
A zombie?
Yeah, maybe a zombie.
Oh,
Maybe you don't see a physical zombie, but kind of like that. Yeah, somebody that he wronged. So it's just a play about desire and class and evil and hubris, and yeah, it was a banger.
and you could follow it?
Kind of. They had English subtitles
Oh,
projected
okay.
at the top, which was great.
So was
Uh,
it like at a theater or was it like physical people?
yeah, it was physical people,
And they had
and
they had this thing that you could read?
yeah, it was just a
Well, that
very
helps.
small, like little screen, like above the proscenium. Yeah.
I saw you mentioned in a poem recently by Orchid. And they wrote, I just stealing the national. I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence.
Yes. Yes.
Is that the
Yeah,
only poem you've been mentioned in, or have you been mentioned in any others?
that's that may be my only appearance by name in a poem. Yeah, that may be it.
Have you
Honored.
written in any? Have you written any poems where you've mentioned other people?
Only not sort of. I think so. Like the last poem I really wrote and published was a poem about Rochelle, and it was in this anthology like a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
So yeah, but
Have you
that's about
been
it.
Have you been down to Austin, Texas?
Yes, for Orchid's wedding, and also I've got actually a very close friend as well who lives there, Aaron. I was just down there most recently, a couple in April. Yeah,
If
for like a
you
road trip.
if you ever go back and hang out with them, you should go see an AEW wrestling show. I think you guys would really enjoy it because it's a wild
Yeah.
sort of event. Have you ever been to a pro wrestling show? And who's your favorite pro wrestler?
No, so now you've stumped me. That's one area where I've never.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. What is this something you follow closely or love?
Oh yeah, I love pro wrestling. I've been
Yeah,
following it since I was a little kid. I'm very into trashy pop culture stuff,
that's awesome.
like
That's awesome.
cartoons.
Yeah. I mean I love kind of from a distance the aesthetics of it that I see just sort of online, but I just don't know any of the people or the rituals or any of that
It's a
stuff. So
giant spectacle.
hmm.
It's a big performance. I think Bards wrote about it.
Oh yeah.
Do you know him?
Not super well, no.
The essayist,
Yeah.
a long
Well, hey,
time.
let me know if there's like a specific essay I should check out on pro wrestling. I'll absolutely read that.
Okay. I bet Orchid, they probably know one. They're very
Oh,
into
totally.
wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been about an hour. I
Hmm.
feel like that's a good time to wrap things up.
Yeah, yeah, that flew by. This was so nice. Thanks again for asking me
No,
to chat. Yeah.
no problem, man. I really enjoyed this as well. Is there anyone that you would want to see in the future if I could like get this going and get, more people?
Wow. Well, you know what? You opened the conversation mentioning seeing Julie's poetry for the first time in Strays. You should talk to Julie.
I will try to do that if she
Yeah.
agrees to it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, thank you, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great chatting with you. Yeah.
We'll see you around.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too, man.
All right.
Bye.